Hello. Today I'd like to share a story about moving to the United States. I was born in Germany, and the story of why I moved to the US is a very interesting one. I didn't grow up being around many deaf people. I think I met only 3 deaf people growing up. It was an interesting way to learn about being deaf. When I was 11 or 12, I was walking through the airport with my family, and we noticed an old man sitting in the corner. He was dressed in dirty clothes, and he held out his cap, and he was begging. I was pretty turned off by the looks of him, but my dad encouraged me to go over to help him. I didn't want to have anything to do with him, but I went over, and I said, "Hello, nice to meet you." And he handed us a card, which I looked at and then gave to my dad to read. The next thing you know, my dad got all excited and told me that this man was deaf, just like me. And as a 12-year-old, I looked at this man dressed in rags, begging, and I wondered how my dad could think he was just like me, or that I was just like him. But I knew I wasn't going to grow up and be like that beggar. I just filed away the experience in my memory for later reflection. Another person I met was a deaf woman who was in her maybe 50s or 60s. This was when I was 12 or 13. I thought she was ancient, but maybe she was 50 or 60. I met her in a small town in Germany called Horbach. The woman lived with her sister and her sister's husband, I think. They were friends of my mom's, so we went to visit. My mom told me she was so excited for me to meet this lady who was deaf. I understood this by reading her lips, and I was fine about meeting the woman. We greeted everyone, and it turned out that all this woman did was point. She was deaf, but she couldn't sign or speak or communicate in any way other than pointing. And here's my mom saying that this woman was deaf, just like me. And I looked at the woman, who was nice, but couldn't communicate at all. My mom even tried writing to her, but she couldn't read. She had to rely on her sister to try to explain what my mother had written through gesture and home signing. I looked at this deaf lady who couldn't read or sign or communicate very well, and I thought about the beggar in the airport who handed out the cards asking for money and pity. I also thought about people thinking they were just like me. Well, I didn't want to be just like them. My parents seemed to think it was okay for me to be like them, but I wanted to have a different future. I decided that I wanted a career as a youth pastor. And I started to looking at colleges to see how I could do that. I contacted one university to register for classes to become a pastor. The advisor was very supportive of my taking classes, but wanted me to know that I wouldn't be licensed as a minister. I was confused, and he explained that I could take the classes and would pass, but deaf people were not eligible to be licensed. In Germany, deaf people were forbidden from becoming a pastor or working in any profession that required a license. Well, I figured maybe I could be a teacher instead. So I started taking classes, making it through without an interpreter. I passed my classes and received A's, and I was pleased. But a woman explained to me that being a teacher also required a license. which meant I couldn't do it because deaf people couldn't be licensed. I decided that if I couldn't be a teacher or a pastor, school wasn't worth it. I withdrew from school, and a little while later, I was reading a magazine, and I saw an article about a deaf man who was both a pastor and a teacher. I was so excited to see someone deaf who was in both these professions. I was curious to know where he lived, and as I read on, I discovered it was here in Minnesota. So I wanted to move to Minnesota. Remember, I was in Germany. I was fluent in reading and speaking German, but my English was somewhat limited. But I decided to move to Minnesota to be able to follow in this man's footsteps. In preparing, I looked at a map to decide which city I should fly into. I had worked to save $5,000, which I thought was so much money. In looking at where to fly, the ticket to Minnesota was expensive, something like $800. I wanted to save my money, so I decided to fly instead into Dover, Delaware. Well, it looks pretty close to Minnesota on the map. I figured the map was the same scale as Germany's, and I would easily take a train over to Minnesota once I landed in Dover. As my plane landed, I was so excited to be in the US at last. When I got off the plane, I asked an airport employee where the train station was. The man was confused because there wasn't a train station at the airport. I couldn't believe it, because in Germany, train stations were everywhere. But there was no train station at this airport. The man asked me if I wanted to ship a box, and I replied, no, I wanted to travel to Minnesota, not ship a package. The man chuckled a little at my enthusiasm, and through our awkward communication, he finally told me that I needed to take a bus. Well, no. Actually, what he said was that I needed to ride the Greyhound. So I knew I needed to ride a Greyhound. I had a dictionary with me, and I looked up the word. And it said that a greyhound was some kind of dog. I really didn't understand what he meant. Was I supposed to ride a dog all the way to Minnesota? I decided to drop the idea for the time being. I took a taxi to a hotel for the night so I could figure out what to do. When I got to the hotel and relaxed a little bit, I asked the man in writing for more information about the Greyhound. Well, he wrote back that I should look in the yellow pages. I nodded and then asked him where I could find it. I also asked what it was. He said, oh, you'll find it. It's a thick book in your room. When I got to my room, I searched all over for some yellow paper. I looked at the wall for yellow paper, in drawers, everywhere I could think of. I finally went out into the hall to see if I could find someone to explain about the yellow pages. A woman finally passed by and explained that the yellow pages were the phone book. I finally understood, although I was curious why it was called that, but I went back in my room to find it. The woman showed me that the book itself was half white and half yellow. I looked in the yellow half for Greyhound, but I couldn't find it. And I remembered that Greyhound meant dog, so I looked under dog, which didn't help either. I went back to the desk and explained I wanted to get to Minnesota, and the man explained that to get there, I needed to take a bus. Ah, I finally understood. The Greyhound was a bus, and the yellow pages meant a phone book. I thought I was fluent in English from my studies in Germany, but apparently not. Well, I finally did get on the Greyhound bus, and after a 3 or 4 day journey, I made it to Minnesota, and I was thrilled to see this place at last. And that's my story.